Increasingly, the most powerful images from a news event are captured by eyewitnesses. The almost universal use of smartphones and the popularity of social networks means that before news organisations can arrive at the scene, there will almost always be footage of events already uploaded to the likes of Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, or on streaming services like Periscope and Facebook Live. Other bystanders might also have footage on their phones. And increasingly, news organisations are interested in using user-generated content to support news stories. But in doing so, they navigate tricky legal grounds and ethical dilemmas. Pressures on newsrooms also make journalists increasingly reliant on user-generated content, as titles can't afford the staffing levels required to cover live incidents. This can mean cut corners, especially with the growing demand to break stories online first. We'll start by contextualising the issue, looking at recent breaking news stories, before we develop our understanding further, exploring the issues of legality, consent and verification. As newsrooms have become smaller and technology has improved, journalists and producers have become more reliant on sourcing content from social media. Twitter is one of the main sources of breaking news content, with many brands owning a separate PictureDesk account set up to source content. But users do not always understand where their images will end up or how much attention journalists pay to consent. There is also an important distinction to be made between the embedding of an image with Twitter's branding and saving and re-uploading an image file. Recent examples of breaking news events, like the fire on Sauchiehall Hall Street, were good examples of members of the public taking pictures before news photographers got to the scene. And instead of getting a camera to the scene, many news websites tweeted those who'd uploaded their own pictures and videos to Twitter to ask if they could just source their graphics. Here, an individual has tweeted a picture of the fire, and within minutes a journalist from the Sunday Post responded asking to use the image. The image was then uploaded onto the Sunday Post's website within minutes, acknowledging the user's Twitter account in the caption. But on other occasions, titles took user-generated content, even from ones who'd explicitly refused permission. And different stories exist of users reclaiming fees for their content, often requiring legal intervention. However, user-generated content of breaking news stories remains a very current ethical issue. There is a lack of precedent and user agency is compromised by the pace of events, as well as the drive for news websites to secure breaking images.
When a person takes a photograph or creates a video, they become the copyright holders of that content. Before social media platforms, a journalist would have to contact the copyright holder to gain permission to use this content and would have to credit them. Social media platforms have made this relationship less clear-cut. Tweets, for example, may be copyrightable, but they must be original and fixed. A tweet is fixed on Twitter's servers and may be a person's original thoughts. What many members of the public do not realise is that in agreeing to the terms of use presented by these platforms, the relationship between an individual and the information they create is fundamentally changed. Facebook, Twitter and Instagram state that your content is covered by a non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free worldwide licence. This means they may use your content or license it out to other parties without your explicit consent. A journalist would still have to contact the creator or the platform to use this content in an article. A journalist may also, however, embed content like tweets. If a tweet, for example, is embedded, the content is still technically contained within the original platform and may be used without asking the content creator. Legally, this is completely fine, but may be ethically questionable. Social media users may not be aware that the information they have posted is being used in a news site. A photographer may also want payment for this content.
For the ethical journalist, consent should never be assumed. However, many news outlets and corporations often take advantage of the ambiguous nature of the notion of consent in the age of Web 2.0 and participatory journalism. What constitutes consent is not always explicitly stated in advance by those seeking to gain access to user-generated content from its original source. Examples of this include implied consent, which assumes that the author intended for the content to be available for public use and shared wider than their own social circle and go viral. Hashtag consent, where by partaking in a branded or company hashtag, there is an assumption that the original author is giving permission for their content to be used. And checkbox consent, in which the original author of the content must take the deliberate action of ticking a box. However, few people get around to actually reading the small print and are often left unsure of what they're actually signed up to. These forms of consent are not exactly the most ethical ways of gaining permission to use other people's work, and are often utilised by news outlets as an affordable way of getting authentic and first-hand accounts of unfolding news events. Journalists may also adopt other sketchy methods, which privilege gaining access to content over gaining consent to use it. These include the once verified approach. Some news organisations use the content as soon as they have it verified to their standards, with or without permission, although they may continue to pursue permission after the fact. This can include news organisations that embed user-generated content on a website or in a mobile app as permitted by a social network's terms of service. They might do this because they believe the interest in informing outweighs the concerns and rights about rights and permission. This approach might stand up in a court of law if intellectual property theft is pursued by the originator, but undoubtedly raises some ethical concerns. Also, the factor in news value approach, where permission is sought and credit is given for all user-generated content, but exceptions are made for material that is of unusually high news value, for example, being of public interest. In other words, you take the occasional legal risk in the interest of producing important journalism. From an ethical perspective, these approaches exist within a grey area, in the sense that they are neither entirely ethical or entirely unethical, but rather a bit of both. Therefore, journalists should try to adopt a different approach, one that places consent and accreditation at its heart as a categorical imperative when dealing with user-generated content. Potential contributors should always be informed beforehand about how their material might be used by your news network and be credited for their work. One way of doing this would be a permission-first approach. Under this approach, the news organisation gets permission before using user-generated content on any platform. Depending on the news organisation's legal considerations, this may be verbal or in writing, constituting a simple OK or taking the form of a written contract which is signed by both parties. Content creators are always credited with the work they have created unless instructed otherwise by them. For the ethical journalist, consent should never be assumed and should always be sought before using someone else's content, and you should never ever pass someone else's work off as your own.
Fake news is becoming more and more prevalent in society. Deliberate misinformation or hoaxes are being spread via news outlets and through user-generated content. The amount of content that's being created can make it difficult to decide what is authentic and what is not. This is why it's important for media organisations to take steps to verify all user-generated content. After all, the media has ethical responsibilities to the public as much as they do to the sources that they use. Here's an Instagram account that appeared to belong to a migrant, documenting his route from Senegal to Europe. This garnered thousands of followers and global media attention. It later transpired that the account was a hoax, set up as a marketing campaign. Despite this, it was reported widely as being authentic. In a breaking news event, journalists are under pressure to be the first to report a news story. Often, this means they are reliant on first-hand eyewitness reports to obtain photos and video footage. While there is lots of genuine information available, it is all too easy for a journalist to accidentally risk their reputation by publishing satire, propaganda, or copycat content instead of genuine content during a crisis or emergency news situation. This is further complicated by the fact that in closed societies or countries with strict controls on the media, journalists are being forced to use social media content to cover a story. For example, research has shown that over half of the content used in stories relating to the Syrian crisis have been user-generated. So what steps can a journalist take to ensure they verify information? According to the BBC Academy, a journalist needs to be able to easily see if there are any references to the same or similar content on other social media sites or the wider web. Questions to ask are: is this an authentic piece of content? Did the persons whose name appeared on the Twitter account send it, or is it a fake tweet? In terms of social media, always look beyond the blue tick. Analyse the account, checking its credibility, history, interaction and relationship with other users and websites. There are websites that can help assess how genuine accounts are, such as twitteraudit.com, twittercounter.com and clyde.com. If you're using photographs, analyse the images for signs that they have been manipulated. Things to look out for include differences in scale, light, weather and equipment. It can also be useful to check if images have appeared elsewhere in the web. Click on the camera in Google Images for Google Reverse Image Search.
To sum up, user-generated content can add a vital human element to storytelling, however it is essential to use this information ethically. Legally, content can often be used without explicit consent, but this does not represent an ethical approach to reporting. An ethical journalist should seek a permission-first approach to consent, where the news organisation gets permission from the content creator before using it. The verification of user-generated content is imperative for a journalist to live up to the ethical responsibilities they have to their audience. Care should always be taken to make sure that information is accurate. Hopefully this video has helped you better understand the ethics of using user-generated content.